Hey, Restore Hearts family. This is the voice of your host and producer of the show, Tiara Sharma. And thanks again for joining me today for another episode of the show. So if you've been with us for the past few weeks, you know that we have been talking about mending mother-daughter relationships. And we completed a process called AFAR. That's AFAR, to help us jumpstart our journey to healing and mending our mother-daughter relationships. We worked the process, and now I just want to come back and talk about some of those things that were not communicated while we were doing. See, during the past 4 weeks, we spent a lot of time addressing the soul. So the work that we did, which was addressing our thoughts and our emotions and our behavior, is part of our soul. So I want to talk to you about this concept that has really helped me in my mental health wellness journey. And I think it'll help you too. You see, we are 3-part being. We are spirit, we are soul, and we are body. And a lot of times when we are working on these different challenges that we're having, for us during this past month, it's been mending mother-daughter relationships. A lot of that was focused on us doing the internal work that it takes to do before you even have a conversation with someone. So we spent a lot of time addressing what was in our soul. Our soul is our mind, our will, our intellect, our emotions, our imagination, and our appetite. But we must remember that in order to have a successful mental health journey, we have to remember the whole person. So we must also address the spirit, and then we also must address the body. During my process, what I didn't get to talk about in the doing is that my process to execution first started with prayer, and prayer addresses the spirit. So I want to go back because this is a very important part of my success, and I'm going to walk you through that process. There were 4 things that I did in my process to execution to get to the point where I talked to my mother about the things that I shared. So number 1 was prayer. I prayed and asked God for a strategy to have this conversation with my mother. Because remember, I told you in the beginning that I was terrified to talk to my mother about the things that were coming up in my thoughts and that were coming up in my emotions because it had been buried for so long. I didn't even know it was there. So once it came to my attention that I needed to talk to my mother, I prayed and asked God for a strategy to talk to her. I also prayed and I asked God to prepare her heart to receive what I needed to say to her. Very important, because you have to understand that the spirit of offense wants you to be disconnected from the people you love. It wants you to be offended with what your mother said to you 20 years ago and prevent you from having a great relationship with her today or your daughter. But remember that we did take this journey as a daughter, because all of us have been a daughter, but not all of us have necessarily been a mother. I prayed for the courage to express my thoughts and emotions to my mother. I prayed that my mother would not be offended. We just talked about that. So I actually prayed that she would not be offended with what I say, and for God to help her understand what I wanted to say to her. And then there were also some things that I prayed concerning myself once all these emotions were coming up. So I prayed for an opportunity to just be a daughter. I didn't want to be the good daughter. I didn't want to be the responsible daughter. I didn't want to be the daughter who saved her mother from financial crisis. I didn't want to be the daughter who moved away, graduated, got married, and had babies. I just wanted to be a daughter, because who you are gets lost in those titles and those accomplishments. And I felt like that is what happened in my relationship with my mother, is that there was a level of intimacy that was not there, because all of my accomplishments and all the things that I quote unquote did right were the focal point of our relationship, not really knowing me. And I wanted to be known by my mother. I knew that she loved me, but she did not know me. just want to share a story about what that means. What did that mean to me? So for my 31st birthday, my mother bought me a comforter set. She bought me balloons. She bought me a card, and she bought me some perfume. I was truly grateful for the gifts because I didn't expect to get anything. So I see the balloons. The balloons are great. I believe she got me a cake too. You know, cake is always great. So I see the cake. I see the comforter set, and I really like because I didn't realize that I actually needed it. So it was something that I needed, and I'm like, yes, okay. But it is the perfume that got me. So what do I mean by that? When I unwrap the perfume, I take it up to my bathroom where all the other perfumes are that I hadn't used, and I break down and I start crying because this gift reveals to me that my mother doesn't know me the way that I thought she knew me. So I want to bring out the point that before this moment, before my 31st birthday, I was numb and oblivious to my emotions the way that I am now open to feel emotions and not hide from the thoughts and the feelings that I'm currently having opens up my eyes to this fact. And I cried because that gift revealed to me that my mother did not know me. She loved me, but she did not know me. And so that's something that I had to pray about also, because there's a mix of emotions that comes with that knowledge. And that, man, I know that she was just trying to celebrate me and have a great day. But this feeling of just wanting to be known by the people you do life with is very deep. And so I had to realize that that was a disconnect for me in my relationship with my mother. I didn't want to just receive gifts. I didn't want to just have the titles and be celebrated for that. I wanted my mother to really know me. Number 2, I journaled my experience. And that is what we've been doing for the past 4 weeks when we went through this process of AFAR. So if this is the first episode that you're watching, AFAR stands for the acronym AFAR. A is acknowledge, F is forgive, A is aware, R is retrain. That is the process that we went through for the past 4 weeks. So if you didn't get to do that process with us, you are free to go to my YouTube channel. That process and those videos are there available to you to walk through this process. www.youtube.com/@RestoreHeartsTV. So what journaling the experience did for me is that it allowed me to do the thought dump. I call it a thought dump, and the emotional dump that I needed to do to release all of those things that I was holding on to from childhood. So from childhood all the way through 30, there were so many things that I was unaware of that I was holding on to that were literally making me sick, because we hold those things in our bodies. So even as I started to do this release, and now that you've gone through this process with me, I would love to hear if you noticed any changes in your body over these past 4 weeks. So for me, chest used to be so flared up. Like it was just like a big, huge rash over my chest, and I didn't know what it was. Some people might say, oh, it's a pregnancy rash, is this? No, I know that that rash had been there probably since I was a teenager, and it just started to get worse and worse over time. So as I begin this process of releasing that emotional, what I call now emotional bondage, and those negative thoughts that were keeping me in cycles of mental bondage, that I noticed my skin start to clear up. So I would be very interested to know, did anyone see any improvements or changes in your skin? Please let me know. So journaling, it helped me get everything out. I had the opportunity to evaluate the information and determine what was necessary for me to share with my mother in order to move forward in our relationship. So that's very important, because if you're journaling for the first time or releasing these thoughts and releasing these emotions for the first time, there's a lot of stuff that can come up. So not necessarily everything has to be shared during this process, but as we said, prayer is essential. That's your communication with God, and you will know what is absolutely necessary for you to share in order for this relationship to move forward, in order to say what you need to say and release it so that you can start to build a new relationship with your mother or with your daughter. So the third step in my process to execution was writing the letter. Also, the reason that I decided to write the letter goes back to number one, which is prayer. As I was praying for a strategy to have this conversation with my mother, God reminded me that my mother liked letters, that she liked this expression of conversation and this expression of written word, that it would be a good route for me to use. So I wrote a letter, and that was my strategy. For me, writing the letter allowed me to hit all the points that I needed to share with her, because I did not have the language or the emotional maturity to remember everything that I needed to say in order to say what needed to be said so that we could move forward in our relationship. The strategy of writing the letter benefited me and it benefited my mother. So it's going to be very important for you to pray and ask God for your strategy, because for some of you, writing the letter may not be the best strategy. I love journaling. I think everyone should do it because it's very therapeutic. There is a science behind it. So if you don't know exactly what your method is going to be, then I just recommend that you start with journaling, which we've done over the past month, and then you will gain more clarity about what to do in your own personal process. Fourth thing is execution. So I picked a date and a time to share the letter with her, and then I decided that it would be best for me to communicate it verbally. So I read the letter to her by phone on December 31st of 2020. And, as I was praying and asking God the best way to do it, I read the letter to her verbally. And then when we were finished with the conversation, I sent it to her. I believe that there is a difference between reading something that somebody wrote to you and then them actually speaking it to you. Because in this age where we do a lot of text messaging, we do a lot of emails, we do a lot of communicating via messages that are not necessarily verbal, a lot of things can get lost in translation. Like, there's a lot more that gets communicated when you actually speak. So I would encourage you that even if, like me, you have to write it down, that you challenge yourself to read it or to speak it. And even if you don't necessarily pick up the phone and do it live, you can do a recording as I'm recording today. And that way you can send the message to your mother. There's certain voice inflections and certain emotions and things that get communicated when we use our voice. And that is very important for a person to be able to understand our sincerity and where we're coming from, so that our intentions don't get mixed up in words alone. I know that there's a possibility for that anyway, but that's why we prayed against the spirit of offense that will try to come in and steal the show. But you also cannot allow the fear of offending your mother keep you from expressing how you feel. I would also encourage you to pray that you deliver the message in the right spirit, in a spirit of love, in a spirit of wanting to mend the relationship. Because remember, my focus for this is mending mother-daughter relationships. So that's the question that you have to ask yourself personally, is that, do you even want to mend the relationship? Because if the answer is no, then you probably are not thinking about delivering this with love. That's going to be essential, because as the hard things are being spoken, we want to communicate that this is something that I have to say. This is something that needs to be done for the safety and health of our relationship. So I always want to be leading in the spirit of love. And when I want to let you know about that process with my mother, is my voice was shaky, my body was trembling. Listen, I had a lot of physical responses going on in my body, but I still chose to do it. That's where that courage comes from. That even though this is uncomfortable, this is something necessary and it's something that I must do. So after I shared the letter with my mother, she literally said to me, "I'm sorry, I didn't know that." Did you hear that? She said, "Sorry, I didn't know that." Now remember, my mother had me when she was 20. So she had her own process. She had her own things that she was going through. And to look back at that, 30 years of my life, I was trapped in emotional bondage. Didn't know it at the time. I'm trapped in this emotional bondage that my mother is not even aware of. I'm harboring anger and resentment and pain and hurt towards my mother that I'm not aware of, but she's not aware of it either because she didn't know that. Now, I can't promise that you will have the same response from your mother. Every person's relationship and experiences and traumatic experiences are different for each woman. And so, although I cannot promise that you will receive that response from your mother, I wanted to bring up the point that Tiara, spent the majority of my life in an imagined bondage that only affected me, that prevented me from moving forward in my life, not just with my mother, but in my actual life, in my marriage, in my relationship with my children, in my career, in my money, my wealth life, because it's all interconnected. Decide today that you won't live another day in emotional bondage that you do not have to carry. The choice to release it is yours. And if you're participating in this process or listening to this episode and your mother or your mother figure is not alive for you to do this process, that doesn't stop your process. Go back and complete that process of afar, and then that will help you release those things that you need to release towards your mother, even if she is deceased. The process helps you because you're not dead. You're alive. And in order to continue living, you must release that. Even if you're walking this process alone right now, which means you are the mother or you are the daughter who wants to mend the relationship, but your mother or your daughter doesn't necessarily want to mend the relationship, then you can still be bold and courageous and pray for the restoration of the relationship. No, you cannot force a person to be in relationship with you, but what I know for sure is that God can move the hearts of people in a way that we cannot. He can bring understanding and clarity to people in a way that we may not be able to in our humanity. So he has the ability to soften the hearts of our mothers and our daughters in a way that we cannot do. So prayer is going to be essential in your process because you will get those strategies for what you need to do to stay integral on your part in mending your mother-daughter relationship. So to recap, my process to execution included prayer, journaling my experience, writing the letter, and then execution. So let me know what your process to execution is. Tag me on social media, send me an inbox. You can send me an email at tiara@restoreheartstv.com. Let me know how this episode on mending mother-daughter relationships, a daughter's journey, has impacted your life. And I want you to remember that this is not a one and done. You can use this process whenever you get ready. As a matter of fact, you will need to use it as things come up because we've uncovered a lot of things over the past month. But this process is like peeling an onion. We only touch the surface, especially if this is your first time doing this. We've just touched the surface. So you peeled off one layer, but as you heal and you become okay in this part of the journey, more things will come up. And so this is an opportunity for you to repeat the process. But guess what? This is what I found in my journey, that each time gets easier and easier. You get quicker and quicker each time that you decide to exercise your courage, your discipline, and your faith to move and decide that you are going to be new, that you are going to throw away these old thoughts, emotions, behaviors. You're going to forgive yourself and your mother, and you choose to move forward. There is grace for you in every level of this journey. So continue the journey. Make sure you stay connected with me via my YouTube channel. Follow me on social media. I'm currently on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Clubhouse. I think that's it. So listen, thank you so much for joining me today as we wrapped up Mending Mother-Daughter Relationships, A Daughter's Journey. Listen, I really want to know how this helped you. Let me know if the process worked for you. Send me a message, send me a DM, send me an email. Hey, and as we say in the old church, testify. Talk about the transformation that has happened in your life since taking this journey with me and with God. So next week, we'll end our series on mending mother-daughter relationships, a daughter's journey, with some encouragement for you in the form of prayers, affirmations, and declarations. Thank you so much for joining me today as we talked about and reviewed some of those critical points that I wanted to communicate about the process to execution in mending our mother-daughter relationships. Just going over some of those things that kind of give context to the process that we've been doing for the last month. So remember, prayer is essential to your success in this process because we must address the whole person, the spirit, the body, and the soul of a person, of us, of you, of me, in order to truly see the transformation that we desire in our relationships with our mothers and with our daughters. So I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
this episode of A Star Heart TD.
Life is a journey, and there are many moments. Some moments are smooth. You flow through them effortlessly. There are other moments when life's challenges interrupt your momentum, yet you find the strength to get back on track, to keep moving. So even if you have to crawl to make it there, do it, because victory belongs to you. You are equipped to handle every part of the journey. You were created to overcome this. Don't give up. I love you.